I watched my wife declare she didn't need me anymore after her promotion. So I planned my exit, divided everything, left, and finally claimed my freedom. When my wife said she didn't need me, I believed her and let her prove it on her own. It was during our wedding anniversary dinner that I noticed the shift for the first time. What should have been a celebration of our journey together ended up becoming the moment I understood that our paths were separating. "I don't need you to order for me," she snapped when I suggested her favorite wine. "I am perfectly capable of making my own decisions." The friends at the table shifted in their seats, glances darting from one to another as an awkward silence settled in. That night was just the beginning. In the following months, these declarations of independence became more frequent and increasingly public. She would interrupt me during conversations, correct what I said, and make it clear that my opinion was neither needed nor welcome. But nothing compared to the fateful dinner last month that pushed me to the edge. We were hosting 4 couples, colleagues from her new job at the marketing agency where she had recently been promoted. She was excited to impress them, and I had spent hours helping prepare an elaborate dinner. As I served the main course, I heard what she was saying in the living room, wine glass in hand. "My husband? Oh, he's just in the kitchen. I let him handle the food since he has more time lately." She laughed, even though I was working 60 hours a week while she maintained a standard 9 to 5 schedule. "Between us, marriage is just a piece of paper. I am a strong, independent woman. I don't need him for anything." The words hit like a physical blow. I stood paralyzed in the kitchen, ladle in hand, while the group laughed along with her. In that instant, something inside me shifted. That wasn't an isolated comment. It was the peak of a new pattern. The respect that had been the foundation of our relationship had transformed into something unrecognizable. Later that night, after everyone had left and she fell asleep without even thanking me for dinner, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I reflected on how everything had changed since her promotion 6 months earlier. The gratitude and partnership that marked our early years had been replaced by a strange competitiveness. It wasn't just empowerment. I had always supported her career and ambitions. This was different. She seemed to believe that her success required diminishing me. I thought about our shared finances, how my name was on most of the mortgage and car payments, how I covered our health insurance through my job, how I supported her during her grad school just 3 years prior. Despite the proclamations of independence, the reality was much more intertwined. The next morning, over coffee, I tried to talk about how her comments made me feel. "You're being too sensitive," she dismissed, barely looking up from her phone. "It was just party talk. Besides, aren't you secure enough to handle a strong woman?" Before I could respond, she was already heading out the door, reminding me that we needed to buy groceries and that the credit card bill was due. It was in that moment I knew this wasn't a rough patch, nor something that would pass. The woman I had married, the partner who once valued and respected our union, was gone. In her place was someone who wanted all the benefits of partnership while publicly denying its importance. I made no dramatic announcements, didn't slam doors, nor gave ultimatums. Instead, I began to slowly formulate a plan. If she truly believed she was completely independent of me, perhaps it was time to experience what that meant for real. Not out of revenge, but as a reality check that seemed necessary for both of us. The transformation had been gradual, almost imperceptible at first. 3 years ago, she would call me during lunch breaks just to hear my voice. We spent evenings cooking together, planning the future, discussing our dreams. Back then, we were true partners. Her victories were mine, and mine were hers. I remember clearly the night of the promotion. We celebrated with champagne on the balcony of our building. She had tears in her eyes as she thanked me for supporting her through the long hours and stressful projects. "I wouldn't have made it without you," she said, her hands interlaced with mine. It was the last time I heard those words. Within a few weeks, our dynamic changed. The first alterations were subtle. She started declining my calls during the day, saying she was too busy for small talk. Our nightly conversations about her work went from excited to full of annoyed sighs when I asked questions. "You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under," became the default answer, even though I also held an executive position. Then came the financial signs. Despite the substantial raise, her contributions to our joint account remained the same, while expensive packages arrived daily. Designer clothes, premium cosmetics, status symbols for the new office. When I carefully mentioned the increased spending, she got irritated. I earned this money. I deserve to enjoy it. Our social life underwent the most dramatic alteration. Friends we had known for years were gradually replaced by her new colleagues. People who knew nothing about me other than what she chose to tell. And what she told, I discovered, was a carefully constructed fiction. I was portrayed alternately as needy, professionally stagnant, or simply irrelevant. 6 weeks after the dinner incident, I found myself sitting in our home office, reviewing our bills. The mortgage installment had just been paid in full with my personal funds, as had been happening for 3 months since she forgot to transfer her share. The joint credit card showed spending at restaurants for lunches I hadn't attended, with tips suggesting she wasn't dining alone. That night, she came home late, carrying the unmistakable scent of an unfamiliar cologne. "Work dinner," she explained without me asking. Kicking off her heels and heading straight for the shower, I said nothing but made a mental note to check her schedule the next day. The following morning, after she left for work, I confirmed my suspicions. There was no team dinner scheduled. That wasn't the first lie, but somehow it crystallized everything. This wasn't just about her new independence. It was a fundamental breach of trust. I spent that afternoon making calls, first to a lawyer, then to a real estate agent, and finally to the bank. I wasn't acting on impulse or emotion. It was the calculated response of someone who had spent months watching the deterioration of what was once the most important relationship of his life. That weekend, while she was on a team-building retreat, although the location app showed she was at a lakeside resort known for its romantic accommodations, I opened a new bank account. I calculated exactly half of our joint assets and transferred that amount. Not a penny more or less. I was fair, meticulously fair. I didn't want anyone, not even her, to be able to claim I had acted dishonorably. As I worked, photos of our life together stared back at me. Had she really changed so much? Or was she always this person, just waiting for the right circumstances to emerge? Couldn't be sure. All I knew was that the woman now wearing my ring was unrecognizable compared to the one who had accepted it in tears 5 years earlier. As I closed the spreadsheet detailing our separate finances, a message popped up on my phone. "Don't wait up." Continuing the conversations, having the drinks. No term of endearment. No estimated time of return. Just another casual dismissal from someone who once valued every moment by my side. "I won't wait," I whispered to the empty house. In fact, I no longer had the slightest intention of waiting for anything at all. Planning my exit required precision and discretion. With each passing day, her indifference made my preparations easier. She barely noticed my movements, too absorbed in her phone or laptop to notice my prolonged absences or late-night research. I became a ghost in my own home, silently orchestrating my departure while she remained oblivious to the approaching reality. My first step was securing a place to live. Through a colleague who owed me a favor, I found a furnished apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean and available immediately, no questions asked. I paid 3 months' rent upfront in cash, ensuring there was no paper trail to alert her prematurely. The keys weighed heavy in my pocket, a tangible reminder that I was crossing a line from which there would be no return. Next came the legal consultation. The lawyer listened patiently as I described our situation, nodding occasionally as I detailed the gradual dissolution of our partnership. "This isn't uncommon," she said, organizing documents on her desk. "But most people wait until the relationship becomes unbearable." I explained I wasn't interested in drama or retaliation, just a clean break that honored what our marriage had once been, not what it had become. The paperwork was straightforward. Fortunately, we didn't have children, which simplified things considerably. The division of assets would be relatively smooth. I wanted only what was undisputedly mine. Retirement accounts and investments required more attention, but even those could be divided according to contributions. I signed the preliminary documents, to be finalized later, and stored copies in a secure cloud account she couldn't access. The financial separation turned out to be the most complex aspect. Over 3 weeks, I methodically transferred my direct deposits to a new account at a different bank. I kept just enough in the joint accounts not to raise suspicion, while ensuring I wouldn't be left vulnerable when I finally left. Credit cards were canceled and replaced. Automatic payments for my personal expenses were redirected, and I even set up a separate phone plan to be activated on the day of my exit. Throughout this process, her declarations of independence continued, each one further reinforcing my resolve. During a weekend brunch with her new friends, she loudly proclaimed how she was the one carrying the relationship while I just coasted along. When I received a significant bonus for a project the following week, she suggested I use it to finally contribute something meaningful to our savings. The same savings I had been maintaining alone for 6 months. The night before her planned weekend trip with colleagues, I witnessed the peak of her transformation. She was packing expensive new suitcases, tags still attached, carelessly dropping receipts that revealed purchases far exceeding the shopping budget she claimed to have. When I picked one up, the amount made me wince. "Do we need to talk about spending?" I asked quietly. She snatched the receipt from my hand. "Don't audit me like I'm a child. I earned this trip. Besides, the monthly bills are paid, aren't they?" "They are," I confirmed, not mentioning that I had paid them in full from my own money for 3 consecutive months. "Then there's no problem," she concluded, going back to packing. "While I'm gone, could you finally fix that leaking faucet I asked you about weeks ago?" I agreed, even though we both knew she had never mentioned it before. As she continued organizing her designer outfits, I noticed how she avoided my gaze in the mirror. Was there a glimmer of guilt there, or just impatience to get away from me? That night, she slept soundly while I lay awake, mentally reviewing my final list. My essential belongings were already in the new apartment. Important documents were safely stored. Financial transitions were complete. All that remained was the exit itself, and the letter I had written and rewritten a dozen times. In the morning, I made her favorite breakfast. One last gesture of what was once genuine affection. She ate hurriedly, checking her phone between bites. "I'll be back Sunday night," she said, gathering her things. "Don't wait up." I nodded, watching her rush out without a backward glance or a goodbye kiss. Yet another small death of what we once shared. The sound of her car engine fading down the street felt like the curtain closing on the final act of a play that had run too long. Now alone, I took one last walk through the house that had been our home. Every room held memories of better days, promises made and kept before everything changed. I allowed myself exactly 30 minutes of nostalgia before initiating the final stage of my plan. The preparation time was over. The moment to act had arrived. The house felt different the instant I committed to leaving it behind. Objects that once seemed permanent began to feel temporary, like props on a stage. I moved through each room with methodical precision, collecting the last personal items. Things whose absence she wouldn't notice immediately, but which held great significance to me. My grandfather's watch, my father's leather-bound journal, photos from before I met her. I worked efficiently, having rehearsed this process mentally countless times. The few remaining clothes went into a single suitcase. Important documents were already in my briefcase. I left behind everything we had bought together, including wedding gifts still in use. Those weren't just objects. They were symbols of a shared life I was now letting go of. Morning light streamed through the kitchen windows as I sat at the dining table, pen in hand, staring at the blank sheet in front of me. How to summarize the end of 8 years in a few paragraphs. I had already written and discarded dozens of versions of that letter. Too angry, too guilty, too detailed, too vague. Finally, I wrote from a place of calm and clarity. "I respected your repeated declarations of independence, and now I am honoring them completely. Our joint accounts have been divided equally. The mortgage and utility bills are paid through the end of the month, giving you time to organize yourself. My personal belongings have been removed. I will not be returning. The woman I married valued partnership, mutual respect, and shared dreams. That woman seems to no longer exist. I wish you all the best," Should it be necessary, you can contact me through my lawyer. The information is attached. No accusations, no dramatic explanations, just a simple acknowledgement of the reality she had been building for months. A reality where I was unnecessary and unwanted. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter, where she would see it immediately upon returning. My wedding ring was deliberately placed beside it. The last task was the hardest. I walked slowly through the house one more time, this time to say goodbye. The living room where we spent countless nights planning the future. The kitchen where we danced while making dinner. The bedroom where we whispered dreams to each other in the dark. Each space held echoes of the relationship we built and which she dismantled piece by piece. At the front door, I paused to disarm the security system and remove the house key from my keychain. The small brass key felt absurdly heavy in my hand, a tiny object representing everything I was leaving behind. With deliberate care, I placed it on the hall table. A final surrender of my place in that house. The click of the front door closing behind me was anticlimactic given the magnitude of the moment. No dramatic soundtrack accompanied my steps down the sidewalk. No sudden rain marked the emotional weight of my departure. Just the ordinary sounds of a Saturday afternoon. Kids playing in the street, a neighbor mowing the lawn, birds singing in nearby trees. My car was parked 2 blocks away, loaded with a few boxes I had been transporting gradually over the last week. The engine started silently, and I drove off without looking back, without facing the house. There was no need for a last look. I had already memorized every detail of what I was leaving behind. As I drove across town toward my new apartment, an unexpected lightness began to replace the weight in my chest. It wasn't the ending I had imagined for us, but it was an ending I had chosen, not something that simply happened to me. There was power in that choice, a reclaiming of my autonomy after months of being slowly erased within my own marriage. I arrived at the new building just as the afternoon sun cast long shadows over the parking lot. The apartment was simple, with basic furniture, white walls, lacking the warmth or personality of the house I had just left. But it was mine, a blank canvas, an opportunity to rebuild without the constant undermining of my worth. I put the suitcase in the bedroom and, out of habit, reached for my phone. No messages, no missed calls. She was certainly still enjoying her weekend away, completely oblivious to the fact that her life had just fundamentally changed. The disconnect between her reality in that moment and what awaited her created a strange sensation in my stomach. It wasn't satisfaction or vengeance, but something more complex. A mix of sadness for what was lost and resolve about what needed to happen. I silenced my phone and put it in a drawer. Whatever reaction came when she returned home the following night, I wouldn't witness it directly. The conversation we needed to have would happen, but on different terms than before. No more contempt, no more devaluation, no pretending we were still partners when we had clearly become strangers. As night fell on my first evening of this new chapter, I realized I had been holding my breath for months, waiting for something to change. Now I could finally exhale. The call started on Sunday at 6:42 p.m. I watched the phone light up repeatedly with her name on the screen. 12 missed calls in the first hour alone. I had anticipated anger, confusion, maybe even relief, but the frequency indicated panic. Between the calls came the text messages, the tone of which shifted rapidly. Is this some kind of joke? Where are you? Answer the phone. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk. Now. Please come home. Can we fix this? I replied only once with a simple message. Please contact my lawyer for any questions. Then, I muted notifications from her number. That wasn't coldness. It was self-preservation. Any direct communication would pull me back into the emotional whirlwind I had just escaped. Monday brought financial reality. My lawyer forwarded emails from her, first demanding access to our accounts, then expressing shock upon discovering they had been divided equitably. She had apparently tried to withdraw money and found exactly half of what she expected. Not emptied, not stolen, just divided with mathematical precision. On Tuesday, the tone shifted from indignation to disbelief. I didn't think you were serious, she wrote in an email my lawyer shared. This isn't like you. The irony didn't escape me. After months of treating me as irrelevant, suddenly she claimed to be an expert on my character and intentions. Wednesday brought the first bills, automatic notices for the mortgage, utilities, and credit card that would now fall entirely on her. The careful financial architecture I had maintained for years, largely invisible to her despite her claims that she handled the important things, was now revealing itself in its absence. 1 week after my exit, her mother called. I answered out of respect for the woman who had always been kind to me. "She's a mess," her mother said bluntly. "She didn't see this coming." "That's the problem," I replied quietly. She stopped seeing me completely. The conversation was brief but revealing. According to her mother, she had always portrayed our marriage as perfect to the family, never mentioning her growing contempt for me or our partnership. The public persona of the strong, independent woman apparently didn't extend to familial honesty. 10 days after my departure, the first overdue payment notice arrived at our old house. She forwarded it to my lawyer with a single question. "Is he going to let everything we built fall apart?" My lawyer's response was professionally drafted but essentially said, "You built this reality where you didn't need him. Now live fully in it." 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected package at my office. Inside was my wedding ring with a note. "Did you forget this?" I placed the ring in my desk drawer, struck by her total misunderstanding of my actions. The ring hadn't been forgotten. It had been left behind on purpose. In the 3rd week came the financial escalation. She had discovered that maintaining our lifestyle alone was a challenge. Her salary alone, despite the promotion, couldn't sustain the mortgage that seemed reasonable when split between 2 incomes. The car payment she had insisted we could afford for her new luxury vehicle suddenly became a burden. A mutual friend reached out, concerned. "She's telling everyone you abandoned her without warning," he said cautiously. "That you left her drowning in debt." I thanked him for the information but offered no alternative version. The truth would emerge organically, through actions rather than words. 1 month after my departure, her lawyer reached out to mine. The tone had changed drastically. The independent woman who needed nothing from me was now requesting temporary support, while she adjusted to new circumstances. My lawyer suggested offering a one-time settlement instead of ongoing payments. I agreed, stipulating an amount that was fair but not excessive. 6 weeks later, I ran into her unexpectedly at our old coffee shop. She looked different. The previously carefully maintained appearance now showed subtle signs of wear. Our eyes met for an instant before she hurriedly gathered her things and left without ordering anything. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for a few minutes, head bowed over the steering wheel. That night, a more subdued email arrived, sent through my lawyer. "I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't see the way I was treating you. For the first time since my exit, I felt something other than detachment. Not regret for leaving, but sadness for what had been lost. A connection that was once meaningful to both of us." The practical consequences continued to unfold. She put the house up for sale, unable to keep it alone. Social media posts about embracing change and new beginnings contrasted sharply with the increasingly desperate financial inquiries arriving through the lawyers. The independent life she had proclaimed with such confidence turned out to be more expensive than expected. 2 months after I left, I received the final confirmation of what I always suspected. The bills had come due, and the strong, independent woman had discovered the true cost of being completely alone. 6 months passed like a long, slow sigh. The divorce was finalized with surprising efficiency. She ended up choosing the path of least resistance, accepting the equitable split I had proposed from the beginning. Our house was sold, though for less than we expected. According to my lawyer, she moved into a small apartment on the other side of town and took a different position at her company. Our lives, once intimately intertwined, now existed on separate planes. I adapted to the new reality with unexpected ease. The apartment gradually ceased being a temporary shelter and became a real home. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during the final, difficult months of my marriage. My work flourished, no longer overshadowed by domestic tension. The weight I had carried for so long, The constant effort to maintain a relationship with someone who no longer valued it dissipated, allowing me to rediscover parts of myself that had been stifled. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. "It's me. Can we meet just to talk?" I stared at the message for a long time, conflicting emotions emerging. Curiosity, weariness, a distant echo of the connection we once shared. After careful consideration, I agreed to coffee in a neutral location. She arrived punctually, a trait I always admired. The confident posture that had marked the final months of our marriage was gone, replaced by a more subdued attitude. She looked well but different. The expensive designer clothes had given way to simpler pieces. The elaborate hairstyle was swapped for a more practical cut. "Thanks for coming," she said as we sat opposite each other, steam rising from the cups. "I wasn't sure you would." "Me neither," I admitted. An awkward silence stretched between us before she spoke again. "I've been thinking a lot and doing therapy," she added with a humorless laugh. "I discovered there's a difference between real independence and simply pushing people away to prove a point." I nodded but offered no easy forgiveness. The pain she had caused had been too deep, too deliberate to be erased with a simple acknowledgement. "My therapist asked me when things changed," she continued, slowly swirling her cup. "When I started treating you that way. At first I couldn't pinpoint it, but then I realized it started after the promotion. I was the only woman in senior leadership. They kept commenting that I needed to be tougher, more assertive. Somehow, that morphed into the idea that I needed to reject anything that looked like interdependence, including our marriage." "Yes," I replied quietly. Her eyes met mine directly. "I confused being strong with being hard, independence with isolation." She paused. "I'm not asking for reconciliation. That ship has sailed and I understand why. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did now, who I became, and I'm sorry." The apology hung between us, sincere but unable to rewrite history. We talked for another hour, not about reconciliation, but about closure. She shared that the identity of the independent woman had crumbled a few weeks after my departure, forcing a painful reckoning with her own dependence on others. Not just financial, but emotional and practical too. The colleagues who had applauded her disparaging comments about marriage disappeared when she actually needed support. As our conversation neared its end, she hesitated before asking, "Are you seeing anyone?" "Yes," I replied. "Someone who values partnership instead of seeing it as weakness." I didn't go into details. My new relationship was still under construction, marked by mutual respect and appreciation, qualities I now recognized as non-negotiable. She felt a flash of regret cross her face before composing herself. "You deserve that. You always did." We said goodbye without dramatic declarations or promises to keep in touch. Some chapters are meant to be closed completely. 3 weeks later, I received a small package, a book I had mentioned wanting to read during our coffee meeting, accompanied by a simple note. "Thank you for the lesson on true independence. It's not about needing no one. It's about being whole enough to choose interdependence wisely." The irony wasn't lost on me. Her journey toward genuine strength only began after she lost the partnership she had devalued. My own independence was reclaimed not through grand declarations, but by the quiet dignity of walking away from someone who couldn't see my worth. As I placed the book on the shelf, I reflected on the strange symmetry of our story. She had proclaimed independence while desperately needing support. I had sought partnership and ended up finding freedom in solitude. Both of us found what we needed, just not in the way we expected. The strong, independent woman she claimed to be might finally be emerging, not through declarations or contempt, but through the hard-won wisdom that comes from facing the consequences of one's own choices. As for me, I discovered that true strength sometimes looks like walking away. Commentary from the Dude Reddit. She said she didn't need anyone and found out the hard way that independence doesn't pay the bills by itself.